Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we are talking about how everyone is now talking about a new Super Smash Bros. For Nintendo Switch 2. No, a new Smash Bros. Has not been officially announced for Nintendo Switch 2, however, there's a rumor going around from someone that I do think is pretty credible, and when you also consider the history of things, it does make sense for there to be some sort of new Smash offering soon. So what's going on with this? Is there truly merit to this? And what might a new Smash entry of some kind mean for Switch 2? I've actually been sitting on this idea for a little bit of a while, and now is probably as good of a time as any to get into it. So that's the plan for today. But before going forward, I'm not going to ask you to subscribe. Instead, what I'm going to ask is that you hear me out, listen to the video if you find this topic interesting, and let me know what you think in the comments below after you've finished listening to everything I have to say. But the event that led to this conversation where everyone started talking about Smash Bros. For Switch 2 is a tweet from friend of the channel, Reese Kiwi Talks Riley. So reminder, Kiwi Talks has his own YouTube channel where he does a whole bunch of wonderful podcasts with different developers in the industry. In other words, yes, he's well connected. A lot of great stuff here. His channel will be linked in the description below. Please check him out. Really great stuff. But he tweeted this on May 3rd. These are my 4 favorite game franchises of all time, and it's great that I know all 4 IPs have stuff coming either soon or in a year or 2. GTA 6 in November, another Metroid game on the near horizon, Smash Bros. In the next year or 2, and another Zelda game and the movie in 2027. And so, from this, a lot of things started happening. A lot of people saw that he said he knows that these franchises will be involved within a year or 2. In terms of the Nintendo stuff, he's saying a Metroid game is on the near horizon. Could that mean this year? Possibly. We've heard the rumors of a Super Metroid remake. We shall see. At the very least, I think it's pretty obvious that Mercury Steam likely is working on another Metroid. We know even they've been working on something for the last few years, and Metroid Dread was their most successful game, and they also made Metroid Samus Returns. And it's been some time since Dread. That game came out in 2021. We're now in 2026, so certainly there's been enough time. A new 2D Metroid shouldn't be that far off. That's just kind of logical deduction, common sense. Not necessarily something he heard, but maybe that's also a part of it. In terms of Zelda, it's Zelda's 40th anniversary. We've already talked about the Ocarina of Time remake. Many of us believe that is coming out this year. And we also know the movie is coming out in 2027. And yeah, there are rumors of another Zelda game coming out in 2027 as well. We've talked about that here as well. The thing that is perhaps most curious is the mention of Smash Bros. In the next year or 2. What is going on with that? When I first saw this, I thought, maybe there's nothing to this. But at the same time, Kiwi does occasionally hear about things, and he does hint at things occasionally. But I didn't think that much of it at first. But then you have other places like Dexerto, who had taken this information and portrayed it perhaps not so accurately, so Kiwi responded and said, you are jumping the gun here. Nowhere in my tweet did I say the word new. I might have been referring to Smash Ultimate Switch 2 Edition. I might have been referring to Smash Bros. Melee or Brawl on NSO. I didn't specifically say a new Smash game in 2027-2028, and for good reason. So this to me solidifies something. He is talking about something he's heard. I believe that's implied here, but he's not saying it's necessarily a totally new Smash Bros. Now, I don't think that talking about a Smash Bros. Melee or Brawl on NSO would warrant the mention in the initial tweet, but technically those are possibilities. Maybe the idea of that is something he heard is coming soon, and that's what has him so excited. What I think makes a lot of sense, and this is what I've been anticipating, is a Nintendo Switch 2 edition for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. I think it would be the Ultimate Switch 2 edition. We've talked about this to some extent before. And considering what we've seen with some Switch 2 editions, how they add actually a lot of new content here, there could be significant reason to be excited. But also there's the possibility that maybe they would want to go beyond just a Switch 2 edition, but not quite a totally new game either. There could maybe be a little bit of a middle ground here. But there's a little bit more that's being said by Kiwi Talks and also Nate the Hate, so we'll speak on that as well. So Kiwi Talks, after this Dexerto tweet, followed up on his own thread and said, "People are misquoting me again. Nowhere in the tweet did I say any of these games are new. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't, but I was vague for good reason to protect devs. It could be new, it could be a spin-off, it could be a remaster, it could be something on NSO. Don't jump the gun and get ahead of yourselves." And this goes beyond Smash here, like with the Metroid thing. Maybe you could make the assumption he's talking about a brand new 2D Metroid, Metroid 6, to follow Metroid Dread, which is Metroid 5. Don't get confused with the Prime numberings. But we have heard a rumor that this Super Metroid remake wouldn't be like in the same style of Metroid Dread, but would be pixel-based. Now, that is just one rumor that doesn't have a lot of backing. I'm not saying that's exactly what's going to happen, but if that is what is happening, then that probably wouldn't meet the expectations of some if they're thinking we're going to be getting a full new Metroid from Mercury Steam soon. That might be a little bit of a stopgap to celebrate the anniversary before we get that next new 2D Metroid a year or two from now. So the point is that Kiwi Talks is talking about how there's a lot of flexibility with what he just put out there. But also he is being vague on purpose to protect those who have given him whatever information he has that led to this tweet. However, Grant Aker on Twitter also added Nate the Hate on this, and there are some things here that I thought were interesting. So Nate the Hate responded, "Another Metroid was leaked, discussed in March." That goes back to what we were just talking about. A Zelda for 2027 was recently tweeted out by Nash Weedle, and obviously Nintendo will make a new Smash Bros. For the Switch 2 eventually. So I find it interesting that Nate the Hate again mentions Nash Weedle. This isn't the first time or even the second time they've collaborated before. A lot of people trust Nate the Hate but don't trust Nash Weedle, and I just think it's worth pointing out that maybe Nate the Hate, based off all the things he understands behind the scenes, also agrees that Nash Weedle at least has some proper sourcing. I'm not saying everything is going to be correct. I mean, even Nate the Hate, he heard that Star Fox would be getting revealed in April. That hasn't happened yet, by the way. I still believe Star Fox is happening, but we'll talk about that when it's revealed. Hopefully it happens soon. But continuing here, Wesley asks, "Is Zelda 2027 different than Ocarina of Time Remake?" And Nate the Hate responds, "I believe the rumor by Nash Weedle was a 2D Zelda game, but I don't recall from memory what his information suggested." Yeah, for those who weren't following, Nash Weedle has talked about these code names. Codename Bernard, which would be a follow-up to the Zelda games made by Grezzo as of recently, Link's Awakening Remake and Echoes of Wisdom, so the suggestion would be something along those lines. And so yes, it would be separate from the Ocarina of Time Remake, and that would also imply Grezzo is not involved with the Ocarina of Time Remake, which we've discussed before may have big implications for how Nintendo's going to be handling Zelda remakes in the future, which I have a whole other video about. It's probably going to be in the iCard, but yeah, this is everything that's been said regarding this whole rumor thing, if you want to call it that. And I think it's fair to call it that because there is clearly implication here by Kiwi that he's heard something. What that something is, he's being vague about, but definitely something. And the fact of the matter is, there is going to be something new for Smash soon. Why do I say that? Not because I've heard anything, but because it is so obvious. When Smash came out for Nintendo 64, it was a massive hit. They made sure to have Smash Bros. Melee available early on for the Nintendo GameCube. Super Smash Bros. Brawl was made available early on for the Nintendo Wii. Smash Bros. For Wii U and 3DS was made available relatively early on in that generation as well. Smash Ultimate came out late 2018, less than 2 years into the life cycle of Switch 1. Not within the first year, but within that 2 to 3 year window of these consoles, Smash Bros. Has come out. And so considering the history of things here, very consistently, Smash Bros. Is out relatively early on to the generation. Not necessarily within that first year, but within that 2 to 3 year window of the beginning of a generation, we see a new Smash Bros. This has happened consistently, and I don't think things are going to change this time around. However, there are some other considerations to be had here. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate was a very complete game, the most complete Smash Bros. To date, and it had extensive DLC that followed. And then after that, Sakurai worked on his YouTube channel and Kirby Air Riders, which he only just finished recently. So it's hard to envision a totally new ground-up Smash Bros. Has been in the works for years and is about to be announced. That seems pretty unlikely. Now, is it possible that they've been working on some sort of Smash content alongside Kirby Air Riders? I think there's definitely possibility there. Some people might argue that Sakurai focuses on one thing at a time, and that may be, but I also think it should be considered that Sakurai is getting up there in age, and at some point or another, he is going to have to retire. I'm not saying it's going to happen immediately, but this has been an ongoing conversation, and eventually Sakurai is going to have to pass the torch when it comes to Smash Bros. Nintendo's not going to stop making Smash Bros. Smash Bros. Is too successful for Nintendo to just say, you know what, Sakurai's done, we'll never touch Smash again. No, Smash Bros. Is the most successful fighting series that also functions as huge cross-promotion for so many different series, even outside of Nintendo. This series is a cash cow that is essential to Nintendo's business. So Smash Bros. Is not going to die. Smash Bros. Is going to continue, and Smash Ultimate is not the end. But they are going to have to be considerate of the transition, and at some point Sakurai is going to have to step down or step away. And that may mean he's going to have to tutor up or prepare the next generation to make Smash Bros. Maybe there's someone that's going to shadow him on whatever's next. Maybe he's going to take on more of an overseeing role with the next project to prepare things to step away. And we could be looking at a scenario here where we're not going to get a totally new Smash Bros. This generation, somewhat similar to what happened with Mario Kart. Maybe they'll be tinkering around with a new Smash Bros. As they were tinkering around with a new Mario Kart throughout the entire generation, but they'll see so much success with something else, and considering the situation with they're tinkering around with, they'll wait some time. And so we got Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and they tinkered around with Mario Kart World for many years, until it came out as a launch title for Switch 2. Maybe what we get for Smash Bros. Is something like a Smash Ultimate Deluxe, and that is such a great potent release that we don't need a brand new Smash Bros. In whatever form that takes, because after Ultimate they may want to try something very different, and that won't come for a significant amount of time. Maybe still on Switch 2, but it'll be a few years from now, especially considering that Sakurai just finished Kirby Air Riders. But also at the same time, considering the Switch 2 editions we're seeing, and how successful the Switch 1 is, I don't think exactly a Mario Kart 8 Deluxe situation is going to quite work either. They might have to make this package a bit more meaty. Maybe they call it Smash Bros. Ultimate Nintendo Switch 2 Edition plus Fighters Pass Volume 3. Maybe they come up with a slightly different name and brand it as something a bit more extensive. But at the very least, this is what I'm expecting. I am expecting everything in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate to be in whatever they brand this new Smash entry for Switch 2. I expect the resolution to be at 4K. The only time it wouldn't be running at 4K is when they run it at 1080p to also have a 120 FPS mode, which maybe wouldn't be for 8 players, but when you're running up to 4, yeah, it can go up to 120 FPS in 1080p. This isn't anything unusual for Smash Bros. We've seen Smash Bros. Max out settings on prior consoles, like you look at the Wii U for example, it was one of the only 1080p games, also at 60 FPS. So that basic stuff I expect. I also wonder if they'll go a step further to improve the visuals even more so. If this is just kind of like a deluxe, then maybe not, that might be enough. But I wouldn't mind slightly brushed up textures as well. Maybe improved lighting and better particle effects. That would be plausible on Switch 2. The online's gotta be fixed. Online has been horrendous for every single Smash entry. It's now time to play Smash Bros. Game where there isn't terrible lag happening during online matches. That needs to be fixed. And now with Switch 2 having voice chat, there's even more of an emphasis now. So definitely, that's kind of like my bare minimum expectation in terms of improvements for this next version. But actually, I expect even more than that. I expect that there will be new characters and stages. How much more? There's room for debate there. If they handle this like a Switch 2 edition, I imagine the Switch 2 edition part would be what I just mentioned. But as we've seen with other Switch 2 editions, you'll get the Switch 2 edition plus like some sort of expansion. And so in this case, it would be plus Fighters Pass Volume 3, which I think would come with 6 new characters and 6 new stages. What those characters might be, there's all sorts of possibilities, but I'm going to go over 3 that I believe need to happen. Leon S. Kennedy from Resident Evil. Leon is basically the most popular Resident Evil character. Leon has a lot of history with Nintendo, with Resident Evil 4 coming out first on Nintendo GameCube, and now with Resident Evil Requiem, mainline Resident Evil coming back to Nintendo after so many years, him being the star there as well. It makes a lot of sense. Not to mention, this character is just really cool, and there's so much moveset potential between his suplexes, his throws, his roundhouse kicks, his stomps, his new ability to parry with the hatchet and all the slashing that can be done there, and then the wide array of weapons Leon has used across the different games. There's so many different unique things they could put in there. There is so much moveset potential that needs to happen. But also, kind of like what they did with Snake and kind of like what they did with Pit, I want to see a little bit of emphasis placed on the one-liners for Leon S. Kennedy. Him having a phrase for every single character, or at least the main ones, would be amazing. And as for the stage, it's gotta be the police station, with Mr. X being a boss enemy for the stage hunting you around. It makes way too much sense. But going beyond Leon, I do envision this Fighters Pass would be a mix of first and third party like the prior two. So there's gotta be some key Nintendo representatives here. One of them that I feel like makes way too much sense is Ditto. Not Ditto from the original games, but the Ditto we saw from Pokopia that's now become a great success. If you've played Pokopia, or if you have at least looked at enough trailers and previews and such, you would know that the Ditto gets quite a wide array of different abilities from different Pokemon. So Ditto basically has moves from all sorts of Pokemon, like Scyther, for example, squirting around from Squirtle, being able to fly like from Dragonite. So much potential there, it needs to happen. Now for the stage for Ditto, I would imagine it would probably be just kind of like the base area where you see the Pokemon Center and stuff. What would be crazy is if you have save data for Pokopia, they show your area in the background for your stage. That would be intense. I'm not even sure it's possible, but if they could do it, that would be incredible. This is a Switch 2, which is a lot more powerful than prior Nintendo consoles, so maybe something like this would actually be feasible. But one more character I'll point out that I think also needs to happen is Sylux. Sylux is from Metroid Prime. He's become a recurring character, and from Kensuke Tanabe, the Prime producer who's retiring, he has told us that Sylux is going to be a significant character moving forward in the Prime series. So it makes so much sense for Sylux to be involved here. We've seen characters from other more niche Nintendo series get represented, like Pyra and Mithra from Xenoblade Chronicles 2, for example. Actually, a game that came out in the first calendar year of Switch 1 in December, like Prime 4, and their involvement in Smash led to more sales, which had Xenoblade Chronicles 2 eventually become the best-selling Xenoblade game in the series. So getting Sylux involved here might mean some extra little bit of sales here for Metroid Prime 4 as well, so it does make sense from a business perspective there. And he's just such a cool character with his musical theme. There are so many different cool areas they could bring in from Vuros as a stage, and he has a lot of moveset potential between his lockjaw, his shock coil, his green aura, energy blasts and slices, his spinning, his nano arms. There's so much that could be done there. So there are some very cool characters they can involve with the Fighters Pass, and I don't think there would just be 3, but those are the 3 I'm kind of convinced need to happen. There are other possibilities like Master Chief, Rayman. I'm sure whenever this Smash Brothers is announced, there will be those debates. And I'll also extend this a little bit further here. I don't think there would just be a Fighters Pass Volume 3. Depending on the timeline of things, they might even be considering a Fighters Pass Volume 4, where it would actually be DLC coming out in waves like Volumes 1 and 2. That continued conversation about different characters coming to Smash is so great for Nintendo's marketing. I'm pretty sure they'd want to go back to that if they could. And before closing out here, I'll throw out another crazy idea. Maybe some of these characters aren't going to be brand new characters involved in the DLC or the expansion content, but maybe they'd actually give us new versions of already established key characters, like Donkey Kong from Bonanza, for example. What if we had DK Original or DK Classic, and then we have DK Bonanza, where Pauline's riding on his shoulder, she sings, that's part of his moveset, he has his Bonanza forms. With the power of the Switch 2, his fur texture, and Pauline riding around, I don't think would take away too much. And it could be a whole other character here. Now, some people might feel that they shouldn't do that again because DK is already there, but this is a fighting game. Having multiple iterations of some of your key characters is a pretty common thing. We've already seen that for Mario and Link, and by the way, I do think there should be another new Mario and another new Link, maybe Hero of Time Link, like the adult version. That'd be very cool. Or whatever Mario is going to be like in the next 3D Mario, that would be great to see as well. Or how about Fox McCloud? We're supposedly getting a new Star Fox, how might that look? So I'd be very open to getting new versions of these characters as basically new additions to the game. At the very least, it would be nice to get some new alternative costumes here, maybe like some of the costumes for Metroid Dread, how DK looks from Bonanza, maybe at least an adult Hero of Time version as a costume for Link. Like, they could go in on the costumes here, at least. But I certainly would want more. And I'll just throw out one more thing as a wish, bring back Target Break. That'd be great. But what do you all think? What do you make of the potential of a new Smash entry for Nintendo Switch 2? Realistically, I think it has to be some sort of expansion to Smash Ultimate. But do you have other ideas? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching. If you've gone this far and you enjoyed the video, please subscribe, assuming you haven't already. And I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.